So we've got a big mixing bowl there. Into it, I'm going to add a half a tablespoon of granulated garlic, half a tablespoon of granulated onion, a full tablespoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of MSG or accent. You can omit that if you think you have an allergy or something. You need a cup of powdered milk. You need a half a cup of corn syrup. You need a tablespoon of black pepper. Then we add 2 cups of water. And the last thing you'll need is Morton Tender Quick, and we need 6 tablespoons of that for this recipe. Now we're going to add 2 pounds of ground pork. This just happens to be ground pork from a Tamworth hog that I had raised. But any kind of ground pork will work, whatever you think is tasty. Finally, we'll add 4 pounds of ground beef. Today I'm using 80-20. A variation on this recipe would just call for 6 pounds of ground beef if you want an all beef bologna. Now we have to mix this very well. We want this to be basically a uniform product. The meat isn't chopped fine enough yet to make bologna, but the next step after this and we'll be there. So now I've taken some of that well mixed meat and put it into a food processor, and I'm just gonna give it some pulses. You don't want to do this too crazy, and you don't want too much meat in there or you'll burn out your food processor, but this just helps it be a little bit more of a slurry and a little bit less ground meat texture. So this is a Pullman loaf pan, and I like to bake it in there because bread is square, bread isn't round. So I like the bologna to come out square. Maybe that's just a personal take, but I've greased the inside of that with some cooking oil, and I'm going to start putting meat in a little bit at a time here. And once it's in there, you want to pack it in real well so that there aren't any air spaces in there. So now I've got it kind of packed down in the bottom there, and these are pimento stuffed olives. I'm going to make most of this an olive loaf, and to do that you just kind of press them down in there. I'm going to leave that end with just plain meat so you can see what bologna looks like. It's basically the same recipe for bologna as it is for olive loaf, except that olive loaf you just add olives. And then after we get this layer all seeded with olives, we'll put another layer of meat, pack it down, and keep going until we fill this thing up. It's pretty easy. Alternatively, if you wanted to make this like a pickle and pimento loaf, you'd take like some sweet pickles, and they have to be well chopped up, otherwise it leaves voids, and they'll fall out. So you want kind of a very finely chopped pickle, sweet pickle with some finely chopped pimentos in there. The olives, for whatever reason, don't seem to leave voids. Now before I forget, this 6-pound recipe makes enough for a Pullman loaf pan that's 16 inches long by 4 inches wide. So that's the size of pan you'd need. You can get these on Amazon. Now when I cook this in what's called a water bath. So I have a pan that's a little bigger with water in the bottom, and I bake it in a 250-degree oven until the internal temperature of this measures 160. So I've chilled this in the fridge for about 24 hours. You can see that I didn't get it packed down probably as good as I should have in some spots, but it's still doing pretty well. So we'll use our meat slicer and carve off a slice of the bologna. Looks really good. Now we'll cut off a couple slices of the olive loaf and see how we did. First one broke a little bit, that's alright. I'm going to cut this a little bit thicker, I think. There we go. Yeah, that's how it should look.